That's not good.
That is definitely making it on. I'm putting that at the very end. Just like, what, you have a hole in your mouth?
I do. I have a hole in my chin. Trying to go over the mic, and it just like, whoop, it's too full.
Shake that off there, guys.
All right.
Okay. Randy?
Matthew.
Hey, everybody. I'm Matthew. This is the Grace Youth podcast. We are just finishing our God and Science series where Randy talked about two really important conversations. Another gentleman named Kevin, he came and talked about God's existence, and we had the students all ask questions, and they were able to vote them up and be able to submit other ones, and so we were able to cover a ton of questions, which we'll link at the end of this video. You can go watch our Q&A we did this past Sunday, where we talked through a lot of the questions that we had. And so we're going to cover the rest of them here.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So let's give a quick recap. We talked a little bit about, in our series, God and science, that they're compatible, that they aren't necessarily fighting against each other. And just to even add to that conversation, science doesn't ever really tell you help me say this the right way. Science doesn't tell you why you should or how to believe. Help me understand what I'm trying to say here.
Science doesn't talk, right?
Yeah.
Science doesn't make pronouncements.
Yes.
Science is a methodology for studying the natural world.
Yes.
It's scientists who talk. It's scientists
who
draw conclusions and make statements. And what we talked about in those first couple weeks is that, scientists have biases and worldviews just like everybody else. Yep. And science is not the only way to truth or the only way to know something. There are a lot of things that science can tell us, a lot of things that it can't tell us, like morality, beauty, aesthetics, things like that. Yeah. And that you can be a Christian and a scientist to the glory of God, that they're not in conflict. They're actually very compatible. Mm-hmm. I would say that they're even convergent, because that was the second week. That there's a lot of scientific evidence that it's a myth to say that science has nothing to tell us about God.
Yeah.
There's a lot that science can tell us about God, and science undergirds some really powerful arguments for God's existence. So science doesn't talk, doesn't make pronouncements. It's data and results from experiments and observations that need to be interpreted and given context and meaning. And scientists do that, and they're people, and they can come at that and try and come at that objectively, and they should, but at times that's difficult or maybe doesn't happen as much.
Right. And even from their biases, right, that idea that they are leaning towards a particular conclusion before that conclusion can actually be proven. Thus, as you just said, the non-objectivity that they can sometimes fall into, just like we can, right?
Yep.
When we read, we do this with the Bible. Sometimes when we're reading the Bible, we project an idea onto the Bible that actually is foreign to the biblical text, and that's our bias, and that also is inappropriate. Yep. And so we shouldn't throw every person out with a lab coat, and I know that's not what you're saying, but the reality is that everybody has a bias. And that we should, as best as we can, do this in community where we're able to check ourselves with other people that might not think the exact same way as us. And so all that to be said, we had a ton of questions come in. And you had mentioned, I want to touch briefly on the existence of how do we know if God caused all of this to exist, what caused God was our third lesson.
Yep.
And so one of the scientific discussions that we can have around that is the idea of anthropic principles. Or I heard, I was talking to a gentleman today, it's the idea that all of existence rides on this knife edge. And that as that knife edge is, that there are some things that are pretty broad and they're very well established that like, oh yeah, that makes sense that exists. But for example, like the tilt of the Earth's axis is if it's plus or minus, there's a catastrophic amount of results that can come from that. Or if we are spinning too fast or too slow, we either freeze to death or we burn up, right?
Yep.
Those kinds of things. All of those are what we call anthropic principles, and they are discovering new ones all of the time. In fact, I think Hugh Ross,
with Reasons to Believe.
Reasons to Believe has a whole page that they publish new findings from. I read about that in I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek and Geisler, where they talk about anthropic principles based on the launch to the moon. What was that? Apollo 13, where they had to fly around the moon because they couldn't land.
Yeah, 13 is where things went sideways. 11 was the first to get there,
Right.
And there were others after
Right.
13 that made it back.
Right, and they talked about it from the aspect of Apollo 13 because all of these things went wrong, and so it was a really cool way to articulate it. So anyway, all that to be said, those are all of the things we talked about in our series. With exception maybe to the anthropic principles, but I'd highly encourage you guys to go check those out. Those are really fun and quick things to bring up in a discussion with somebody who's like, God doesn't exist and science has proven that. You can actually be like, well, I'd love to know more about that, because when I look at the design of the world, of all of creation and reality, it can lend itself towards those kinds of things. So let's jump into the questions now.
Okay.
All right, so well, we already kind of covered this first one, which is, can science and faith work together rather than against each other?
Yep, that was the whole heart of my two talks, and I think Kevin's as well. It's just they work together. The Bible's not a scientific textbook. Right. I don't go to the Bible to understand Boyle's law or relativity. There's little overlap. There is some overlap because they're both answering origin questions like life and the universe.
Right.
But in general, there's not a lot of overlap. And where I think there is overlap, they converge. There's a great book by Stephen Meyer called The Return of the God Hypothesis. And he lays out 3 arguments for God's existence that are really, it's not that they weren't popular recently. They've been popular and they've become even more so because the science is pointing more and more towards a supernatural, super intelligent creator based on different lines of scientific evidence. So they very much can work together. They seem to fit hand in glove. I think Francis Bacon said God wrote 2 books, the Bible and the Book of Nature, and they align. I think the Bible and science, when rightly understood and interpreted, will always converge and fit together. They won't be in conflict. So again, if for more on that, go back and watch the first 2 weeks of this series, and you'll see all about how science and faith can work together. Which,
if you smash that subscribe button, see what I did there. You can actually go back and you can find these on our YouTube channel. Okay, great. That's the second time.
I know.
That's incredible.
I'm just going to start drinking water. I keep spilling water.
So our page is just going to become this saturated nonsense of liquid. That's great. Okay, so let's jump to this next one. You've talked about evidence for God and science, but wouldn't someone's faith be stronger or more meaningful if it's not based on evidence? And this one strikes at a pretty intense chord for me. I'm an evidence-based guy, right? And I think actually all of us, when it comes right down to it, we are all evidence-based in how we act and how we live, right? No one would ever just jump out of a plane because they were like, well, I have faith that I'm going to live, right? Like that just wouldn't work. But you would if you had a parachute on, and you would trust that the people who packed your parachute knew what they were doing, and that they didn't cut the cords, and that so there's a trust and a faith based on reason. Or reasonable assumptions that comes from. And so talk a little bit about the idea of how this can work. Why do we want a faith based on evidence?
Well, let me begin by saying I understand the heart of the question. I think it's sort of, if I understand the heart of it correctly, it's, look, wouldn't my faith be more meaningful if I believed and didn't demand evidence from God? Like, wouldn't it be more profound or deeper or meaningful that God, look, I'm going to believe, Lord, and not make you prove it to me, not make you show me that you're there. I think, though, the key thing to understand is what faith is. It's pistis in Greek. It's active trust. And I think trust is deeper when it's based on evidence. So, like, what comes to mind is Matthew 11. So John the Baptist is in prison, and he knows Jesus is his cousin. He knows Jesus is the Messiah. He saw the Holy Spirit come down in the form of a dove. He knows Jesus is the Messiah, but he sends his disciples to ask, like, hey, are you the guy, or should we expect somebody else? And Jesus, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but Jesus commends him to the crowd, says that, like, no one greater has been born than John. But he tells the disciples, go back and tell John what you see and hear. And Jesus lists 6 things. The blind receive sight, the deaf hear, the dead are raised. And he's listing 6 things that the Jews thought the Messiah would do as miracles. We see that in Isaiah 30, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he's basically saying, tell John to go back and reconsider or think about or re-examine the evidence
Interesting.
because he had doubts. And that's why I think evidence matters. When the storms of life come, when you have doubts, when there's suffering, when there's hardship, you'll fall away if you don't really believe it's true.
Man.
And real. And you tend to believe things are true and real when they're grounded in something. And that's what evidence does. It grounds and anchors a trust in a divine person or persons, and one being three persons, the Godhead. Evidence grounds that trust in that faith in a way that the absence of evidence doesn't. It leaves it a little bit more untethered and at risk of being severed if hardship or trial or suffering comes.
Absolutely. I think that's so, just the way that you put that is beautiful, because it, like you said, it tethers it to something that's unmovable, right? I think of, I'm going to build my house on a rock, right? And you can
not sand.
Not sand, right? And sand is shifting. So if you could allegorize that, if you will, like, I'm going to build on the facts and the evidence of history versus the feelings and emotions that I have that shift and move on a regular basis, right? And so you can certainly draw that at a minimum that allegorization of that, or the illustration from that, of evidence versus emotions.
And I think Jesus wants us to. I mean, that's the answer to John. Elsewhere, the Gospels, I can't think of a reference, but he says, like, if you don't believe based on my words, at least believe on the basis of the miracles. He was encouraging people to have faith, to believe, to trust him based on evidence.
Or even Paul, right? He says there's over 500 people still alive, right? And I know there's a debate about the number and exactly how he revealed himself and all of that. But the point was Paul was saying, look, don't take my word for it.
Check it out.
Go check it out yourself. Find the evidence. Because if he isn't alive, if I'm lying to you, we're all fools. And so it's all, and that's Paul the Apostle, right? And you've quoted Jesus, right? And both of these people are extremely crucial to the Christian movement. Obviously Jesus and obviously Paul, and they're commending us to look and find reason and faith and evidence for our faith.
So in terms of being stronger, I think evidence makes it stronger. I don't think the absence of evidence makes it any more meaningful. I mean, you can believe, this to be clear, you can believe without evidence. You can read the Bible and be convicted by the Holy Spirit. Jesus is the Son of God. Put your faith in him. That's real. That's valid. That happens. That's meaningful. You don't have to have evidence, but I don't think evidence is a negative or it detracts or negates something valuable. I think you don't have to have it, but if you do have it, that's not a bad thing or
correct.
It's only a positive.
Fantastic. Okay, let's jump to this next one. Why are there still so many theories about how the universe came to be after so many were or are disproven?
So I think a lot of this is that, in part, is that science is provisional. Anyone can propose a new theory. The question is, do you have any data for it? Do you have any evidence? Do you have any observations? Part of that, though, is going back to bias. Stephen Hawking and others have said or recognized, if the universe had a beginning, that has not just scientific, but theological, philosophical, worldview implications, which may not be entirely desirable or very comfortable. Thomas Nagel was an atheist. Now he's a philosopher, but he said, he's known for saying, I don't believe in God. I don't want the universe to be like that. And I have a number of quotes like that in one of my handouts. So I think part of what's motivating that is a preference to not have the universe be like that, to have there be a creator. I think part of it is what's called methodological naturalism. When I'm doing science, I can only propose natural causes and means. And so,
which is what your one quote said about not allowing a divine foot in the door.
Yeah. Richard Lewontin, he takes his materialism not just as a method of science, but like all of reality. He takes it as a worldview. And that's where I think when it goes from a method to a worldview, you run into some problems. So that's part of it.
And just so in case you've just jumped in on this, we do what we are here at GBC and at Grace Youth is we're about worldview formation. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to give you a way to see the world as it is, and to be able to construct and understand reality via the senses, yes, via science, yes, totally, but science, again, is just data. It doesn't tell you, I used this illustration on Sunday, science can tell you what the chemical makeup of cyanide is, but it can't tell you whether or not it's moral or immoral to poison your grandma to get her inheritance, right? And that, I'm quoting somebody, I can't.
John Lennox
gives
that example.
He gives that example, exactly. And so that whole idea, that's what a worldview does, is it encompasses the 5 worldview questions, which we won't go into now, but those are what happens is when somebody takes a theory of science and makes it a worldview level issue, that's when it gets misused or misguided. All right, we're going to click through these really fast, these three at the very over here, and then we'll spend a little bit more time on some questions about the existence of God. All right, so where was Jesus before he came to earth?
So before he came to earth, he was the divine pre-incarnate Logos, which you
Yep.
see in John 1. And
Totally.
he was in heaven
Yep.
with the Holy Spirit and with the Father.
Yep.
And
But not as Jesus.
he was there as the Logos. He was
Yeah.
there, the pre-incarnate
Right.
Son of God,
Totally.
the Logos. Yep.
Yep.
And where should not be understood as like this octant or quadrant of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's paradise. It's heaven. It's not this spatially located place
Right.
in our galaxy
You
or something.
could say it's a different dimension, but even then, you're still within our dimensionally confined world of reality, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's somehow beyond our beyond, but not. He's both immanent and transcendent. He
Yeah.
created all of matter, energy, space, and time. He made the universe.
Yeah.
Therefore, he existed outside of it before he created it, and
Yes.
that's really heaven is where God is. It's where he reigns from. It's
Right.
so yeah. Where was Jesus? Basically, he was in heaven.
Yeah.
Again, pre-incarnate, not Jesus the man, but just the Logos.
Yep. Perfect. What was God up to before he created us?
Living in perfect, joyful, eternal community within himself.
It's awesome. And these are just so we're clear, these are just very not simple. They're just responses to the idea of theological concepts, right? So Jesus was how did you say it? Pre-incarnate.
Divine Logos.
Divine Logos. That's just the identity of the Son of Man, as articulated in Daniel 7. And then this last one, I believe in a creator, but we're going to spend a little more time on this one, but how do we know that our God was the true creator? And so maybe let's add a little bit of context to this. You've got the monotheistic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, but then you also have the pantheistic or polytheistic.
There's pantheism, panentheism.
Yeah.
Polytheism is just
A whole bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
So you've got all of these other ideas, right? So why don't we believe that one of those gods and all of those other religions did it? And what makes us think that the God of the Bible is the one who did it?
Yep. So starting with pantheism is the idea that all God, everything is God. You're God,
Yeah.
I'm God, this table is God. We've forgotten that we're God. We need to wake up or attain enlightenment, wake up from our state of this illusion of it seems like reality, but it's illusory. Wake up from that illusion and recognize our own divinity. I just have no reason to think I'm God.
Yeah.
I have no reason to think that you're God.
Yeah.
And as far as panentheism, like the universe being God's body, so to speak, same kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's something that we rule out as Christians, and I think atheists and many others do as well, just because there's just not a good reason to think that
Yeah.
God is this table, God is in this table, you're
Right.
God, I'm God.
Right.
So I think it gets very quickly narrowed down to the monotheistic
Yeah.
religions, and there I think the person of Jesus, and this isn't all of it, but it's a big part of it, is Jesus, his death, his resurrection, that miracle, authenticating his claims to be who he said he was, to be the Son of God.
Yeah.
That makes it true over and against, say, Islam, which Jesus spends all the time in the Quran telling you who he's not, and as opposed to who he is, which is what you find out in the Gospels. So I'm saying that very, very quickly and succinctly, but I think Jesus is the key differentiator that helps us know. And Christianity is cool in this way that it's the only worldview that gives you an objective test for reality, for its truth.
Yeah.
You talk to a Mormon, you talk to a Muslim, it's read our scriptures, and the beauty, the aesthetic,
Yes.
it'll just kind of wash over you. It'll hit you.
It'll enlighten you almost.
Burning in the bosom, I think, is the Mormon phrase.
Yep.
But again, a Mormon can say that, a Muslim can say that. Jesus gave a simple test: destroy this temple, and I'll raise it again in 3 days.
Yep.
If he rose from the dead, he is who he said he is. If he
Yeah.
didn't, we should shut down GBC and I'll go home.
Yeah.
And it's this objective historical test for truth that
Yeah.
no other worldview gives you. And I think Jesus' claims and the resurrection passed that the test for its truth claims. And we'll talk about that later in April around Easter time.
Correct.
That's why I think that's one key way he's revealed himself to us in his Son.
Yep.
That's how we know this is true and not
Yep.
another worldview.
And I might be using the wrong term here. The nature of God, so the ontology of God, is that correct? Yeah. So this is one other thing that can also help is when you look at the nature of Allah versus the nature of God or Yahweh, right? And I want to use those very specifically because they are distinctly from a character
They're different.
idea. They're different, right? Their essences are different.
Yes.
And it's really important philosophically to understand that, because when you look at those, you can see, yes, Allah is the Arabic word for God, right? Or the Arabic word for God. I get it, right? And when an Arabic person is talking about Jesus as God, they'll use the word Allah, right? I understand that. However, when you look and compare the Allah in the Quran to the Allah or to the Yahweh in the Bible, they are worlds different. And I think that that's the really key factor. Getting back to the evidence question is, some people are like, yeah, I believe in Jesus. You could ask a Muslim, do you believe in Jesus? Yeah, I believe in Jesus. You can ask a Mormon, do you believe in Jesus? Yeah, I believe in Jesus. And so when you have a Mormon, this sounds like a bad joke, when you have a Mormon, a Christian, and a Muslim all saying they believe in Jesus, a really simple question is, okay, which one?
Yep.
Because all three of them are talking about a distinct individual.
Yeah,
that is different.
A different concept. Yeah, same word, different. It's equivocation. It's using the same term. It has different meanings in each context.
And I think that that's one of the other ways. So yes, you have Jesus is the deciding factor, but also philosophically, you can just look at the character and practices and natures of all of these other beings, and they are basically copies of us, in that they're oriented toward their own power, they're oriented toward their own desires, they're out of control, they are chaotic, they don't bring order and beauty like Yahweh does. Like, there's just so many ways that can help you see that. So
yeah, it's called Christian particularism, and William Lane Craig, J.P. Morrow have written a lot of good stuff about that.
Yeah.
Just what makes Christianity unique. Abdu Murray, local apologist, he's got a book called Grand Central Question, and he looks at central worldview questions that, like, Islam, secular humanism, and pantheism are answering, and then shows how the gospel answers that same question, but in a more profound and meaningful and impactful way.
Yeah.
So a lot of great work's been done on this topic, like what makes Christianity unique or stand out or particular, or in answer to this. So if you're watching this and this was your question, or you want to know more, please email Pastor Matthew, and we'll get you some resources that could help with that.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, we're going to be talking about. So we're going to wrap this up. There are we still have about 3 or 4 questions, but we're running out of time. And so I just want you guys to understand that these were great questions. We're going to actually be uploading another podcast here in a little bit, where we're going to take a deep dive into the idea of consciousness. And how that is almost how would you say, a better way of talking about the origin of things, right? So we have space, time, and matter. That's great, but how do we go from meat
to thinking meat? Yes,
is kind of the thing we're going to be tackling.
It's one of the big origin questions. Every worldview has to say, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there a universe? Why is there life? And why is that life conscious? Why is there consciousness? There are some other origin ones too, but those are the big 3. Consciousness doesn't get as much traction or airtime as it should. It's a really, really powerful argument. I love talking about that. So looking forward to that conversation, which will be coming soon. Yeah. So with that, guys, thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, my email will be in the description below. Would love for you to subscribe and hear more of this content. Again, our hope is that we can help you be the light of Christ in every situation, and we do that by training and equipping students to know and own their faith based on evidence. So, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.